All right, hello again. Hopefully everyone who's hoping to join us is going to be here very soon or already is here. Welcome to the second presentation in the Winter Workshop series hosted by Underwood Conservation District. Again, my name is Tova Tillinghast and I'm the district manager here. You may already know who we are at Underwood Conservation District, but if not, I'll mention just a few things here to get you acquainted. We are a local public agency guided by a board of directors made up of local landowners familiar with natural resources of our area. Our office is in White Salmon, but our work area includes all of Skamania County and western Klickitat County here in southern Washington state. We provide various services, including information, education, technical assistance, and site visits to help landowners address concerns and reach their land management goals. We even provide financial incentives or cost share for certain types of projects, and these have ranged from fencing, planting, and livestock manure management projects to stream habitat restoration and wildfire risk reduction. Hosted on Thursday evenings in December, January, and February, the Winter Workshop series offers folks a way to stay connected and learning about important issues. In December, we learned about stream restoration and some of the local efforts to improve habitat for fish and wildlife. That webinar was recorded and can be viewed from our website. That's at www.ucdwa.org. under news and events. Tonight we'll learn about native plants and their benefits with Elaine Harvey, and February will bring us a primer on common weeds of the gorge and what to do about them with Emily Stevenson. You can register for that final webinar in February through our webpage as well. Also going on at UCD this winter is our native plant sale, running from early December each year through the end of February. You can find our full selection of native plants and place your order directly at the UCD webpage. Pickup this year will be on the third Saturday in March in White Salmon, but we're not sure yet if we'll be able to hold our usual walk-up sale as we have been in recent years. So if you want to make sure you get your native plants this year, do place an order online as soon as possible. Several species have already sold out, so order while supplies last. And just a reminder, you can find all of the most recent news and updates, including upcoming events and information about our plant sale by logging on to that UCD webpage and by signing up as well for our UCD e-newsletter. With me here is Jan Thomas, a resource specialist at the district. She will be our moderator for tonight's webinar, and she's going to describe a few details as we get started with this presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Tova, and good evening, everyone. I just wanted to run through a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. A lot of us are familiar with the Zoom platform by now, but things just may look a little bit different in this webinar style meeting. I'm seeing that we have more than 60 participants on the line right now, so that is excellent. But as it is a big group, we're going to keep everyone muted from our side until the end of the presentation. We do welcome your questions, however, and you can enter them at any time into the questions box. That's usually going to be at the bottom of your screen, marked Q&A. And if I could get just one or two folks to enter their favorite native plant into the questions box right now, I can just make sure that you are hearing us and that everyone can find that questions box when the time comes. So if you wouldn't mind, just your favorite native plant in the question box. There we go. How can you choose just one? Yes, that's true. Thanks, guys. And yeah, that is where you're going to enter your questions for our presenter, Elaine, and we will address those at the end of the presentation. And also at the end of the presentation, if you'd prefer to ask your question directly, you can use the raise your hand function and I will unmute you so that you can just speak your question instead. Just keep in mind that if you do that, you'll also need to unmute yourself before we'll be able to hear you. So that's another option for the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So that's all I have, and I'll turn it back to Tova now, who's going to introduce our speaker for this evening.
Okay, thanks for getting us squared away, Jan. And thank you all who are attending tonight and for taking time to be with us. We are in some really unprecedented and challenging times here in our country. And I know there are a lot of other demands pulling at each of us right now. But I'm confident tonight's workshop will be a rewarding experience in many ways. I believe it's more important than ever to stop and listen to others, to learn from others' experiences and perspectives, and to reflect and think before acting. So tonight we have the opportunity to listen to a really important perspective in this region and gain some wisdom and reflect on some of the healing and nourishing capabilities of the natural world. When there's so much going on between the pandemic, politics, and our own personal lives, we can often turn to the natural world to find solace. So again, thank you for joining and listening tonight, for being open to seeing things from new perspectives. And I hope for each of us, some of the insight we acquire tonight will support us in finding a positive healing trajectory going forward, both individually and collectively. We're fortunate to have Elaine Harvey with us. Elaine has worked as a fish biologist for Yakama Nation Fisheries Program in the Rock Creek Subbasin in eastern Klickitat County for the past 14 years. She also comes from the Rock Creek Kah-miltpah band. She has lived in this region her entire life and learned many of the traditional Yakama medicines and food sources from her late grandmother and other family members. Elaine has a Bachelor of Science degree in Aquatic and Fisheries Science and a Master of Science in Resource Management. She is currently a third-year doctorate student at University of Idaho. Her traditional knowledge combined with her Western knowledge brings about a concern for traditional plants and their resilience with climate change. Similar to her elders and ancestors' reverence for the land and the resources, Elaine carries those teachings and concerns for the environment for all future generations. So even though we can't give her a round of applause right now, let's welcome Elaine. Elaine, we're ready for you.
Yeah, my camera won't turn on. It says it was blocked. Okay.
There we go. We see you now.
Good evening. I'm trying to get my PowerPoint up on. Okay, can you all see the PowerPoint in full screen?
We do, I believe. I do at
Okay.
least. Yes.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Elaine Harvey. My Indian name is Wanachnai, and I come from the Kah-miltpah band, also known as the Rockwood band, and also the Willow Whites Plum band, which is the Mary Hill band that from the Columbia River on my maternal side. And then on my paternal side, I come from this place called Toxins. It's on the Yakama Reservation, a place called Medicine Valley. So that's my background, and I've lived most of my life in Goldendale and along the Columbia River. And so tonight I'll be talking about native plants for health and wellness, and also I'm going to integrate a little bit of climate change and also some historical tribal management of plants and also current management. The Rock Creek Band is one of the 14 tribes and bands of the Yakama Nation. And in this map, you can see the purple color in Washington. That is the Yakama Nation usual and custom areas that were ceded in the 1855 treaty. And I'll show a map further in where the Rock Creek Band is in relation to Yakama Nation. But I wanted to show this map because it shows the Columbia Basin, which is highlighted in the tan color. And then within the Columbia Basin, we have 4 main tribes in the area, the Yakama, the Warm Springs, the Umatilla, and the Nez Perce. And I don't like to leave them out because I also come from Warm Springs descendancy. And so I come from, on my paternal side, and also we all share the same food types. We gather the same foods, we gather the same medicines. We even have, our religion is really the same, the Longhouse religion that is in this plateau area. So, you know, we're all kind of interconnected. We have a lot of intermarriage between the tribes, and so that's important to note. So I work in the Rock Creek Subbasin, and I worked here since 2008. And it's really ironic, after I finished my master's program, I came to work for Yakama Nation Fisheries, and it just so happened that a fisheries project was starting in the Rock Creek Subbasin in 2008. And and our fisheries managers decided that I'd be able to manage this project. And it's called the Rock Creek Fish and Habitat Assessment Project, and it's a BPA funded project. And in the lower right, you can see the Rock Creek Subbasin. And
Elaine,
yeah,
Elaine, I'm sorry, this is Jan. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're, the slides are a little bit fuzzy, and I've seen it's happening for some other folks too. I wonder if you
Okay.
turned off your video, if that would help with the bandwidth a little bit.
okay, turn my video off.
Yeah, that might, I'm not sure where the fuzzy's coming from, but it's a little bit unclear.
Okay. Okay, can you still see the presentation?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so in the bottom right corner, I hope you can see the PowerPoint, is the Rock Creek Subbasin. And it's not a real large subbasin, but it is where it is from the Rock Creek Band, the Kah-miltpah Band. This is the area that we are from, and we still, you know, go there. We have ceremonies there. We gather our foods there. And in relation to the state of Washington map on the left, the Rock Creek Band would be just south of the Yakama Indian Nation reservation, which is in green, and it meets with the Columbia River. So this is where the Rock Creek Band is, and a picture of the canyon. And on the state of Washington map, this area that is in tan color is the lands that are ceded to the Yakama Nation, and we ceded them, but we still retain our treaty rights to hunt, fish, and gather on these lands, as well as on Oregon side, because prior to treaties, the Columbia River wasn't a boundary to us. It was more, the Columbia River is more connecting the tribal nations rather than a boundary. So especially with the fishing, but our band, the Rock Creek Band, we traveled south into Central Oregon to gather our foods. And I bring this slide up. This is the 1855 treaty, the Yakama Nation Treaty with the US government. And this treaty is similar to other treaties, the Walla Walla. It's the Walla Walla Treaty of 1855, where the other tribes in the basin were included. But I really find it significant that our ancestors, you know, they included really important language in the treaty. And this language today, you know, it sets a stage for us. You know, it gives us protections to gather food and medicines, throughout our usual and accustomed lands. And so, you know, as I read the treaty, sometimes I go through it and I think about, you know, the limited English that our elders had at the time. And then, you know, just thinking about conversion to the English language of what our tribes ceded, and we retain these rights. So, and I feel that it's really important, especially with our fisheries resources, our fishing rights, and everything. This is the old Rock Creek Longhouse in the Rock Creek Canyon. This was a big village site at one time, and the Longhouse is standing up here because they were having a salmon feast, and that's when all our people come together. They join together in honor of the first salmon and first foods. And these are really old pictures, and in the 50s. And then down in the lower right is the current Longhouse. It's made of stone. But the pictures I have here of our chief, his name was Chief Yellup. He was the Rock Creek chief for many years, and he was around during the time of Celilo Falls. And he dedicated his life to the preservation of our treaty rights, to the preservation of our foods and everything. And at that time, the chiefs were the ones who managed the fisheries. And Chief Yellup and Chief Tommy Thompson and the other chiefs on the river, you know, they all worked together from the different villages and in little tribes and bands to control harvest. And then not only that, they were the leaders of the ceremonies. And then in the lower picture, later in the presentation, you know, you'll kind of realize the connection that we have. Is the woman. These are the leaders, the woman leaders of the band at the time too. So the women hold an important position where they know when it's time to gather the foods. They know where, and during times of gathering food, sometimes the men went fishing and hunting, and the women went on horseback to gather the different foods and medicines with the children. And these ladies here, they're all my grandmothers, and they're from Rock Creek. And they're all really important because they shared all that knowledge that, you know, for thousands of years, you know, it's oral knowledge of our history, of our culture, of our foods and everything. And these elders here that I show in this picture, you know, they're really important to the Rock Creek band and the other bands that the Yakama Nation has. You know, there's 14 bands. They all had different leaders. And some of the bands were from Wenatchee, some were from, most of them were from the Columbia River down near Klickitat, White Salmon, Rock Creek, like I mentioned, and Celilo. And so, you know, there's a lot of different bands and a lot of different people at that time that lived throughout these ceded lands on the map that I showed you. So for the Yakama and all the tribes, the Plateau Tribes, we believe in cycles, and we believe in seasons, and that there's 4 seasons. And we even have our own calendar, and it's based on our foods. It's based on harvest. It's based on when the salmon come in. Our calendar is based on when the foods are ready. And we know every year, you know, in the spring, you know, you're gonna have your first salmon, and then your first fruits that are gonna come in. We have a feast for that to honor it. So everything is in a cycle. We believe that, and we know that everything goes in a cycle. The salmon, you know, they go to the ocean, they come back, it's a cycle, and they end their life at, you know, end of their term. And everything's connected. And that's what this seasonal round shows, the different kind of plants that we utilize throughout the year. We harvest a lot during the spring and some in the summer, and we preserve as much as possible, you know, so that it will last through the winter. And also, besides the plants, we also honor and respect the salmon and the different aquatic species like the lamprey and all the different fish species and even the crawdads. And we know that everything works together. And there's prior to settlement here in this area, our people knew how everything worked. We knew you had to have how the watersheds work and from the headwaters down, and we knew the different fish species, the different plants, everything. It's already been that way for thousands and thousands of years. So so that is another thing we call traditional ecological knowledge that our people retain. And I think this figure shows that in a good way. So we gather our foods all throughout from many different environments. In the spring, we're in the short steppe area, after the snows melt and, you have your spring rains, and then all these plants grow in the short steppe area. And that's where we get, a majority of our different roots in different celeries and different plants that we utilize. And we gather them from all over. We gather them from the Columbia River, from the valley from the bottom all the way to the top of the ridges. We gather our foods up in the mountains and the meadows, and the range is just really varied, and it all depends. Like I mentioned, it all depends. We go by seasons, and we always start with the first food, and we know when that first food comes, and then there's going to be another one, and we know where we're going to travel. And we still practice these today, to keep that connectedness of our culture, to the land and to our foods. And we try to honor them and share them with our children as much as possible. So you see these different landscapes, you see the short steppe, you see this here, someone can stand here and think, what is here? You can think in this bottom picture here, what is here? There's riparian habitat, and we collect a lot of different berries and foods from the riparian habitat. We utilize all the different willows, the different trees. And then in the upper left is a meadow, and we're losing a lot of the meadow. So in some areas, the meadow plants such as camas and I can say is an indicator species of other important plants that grow in the meadows, because they're all connected. In many of the tribes from the Northwest, from Canada all the way to California and back east, to maybe even to the plains, a lot of us use the camas, and the camas is really important. It's a really important species and an indicator species of the hydrology of of the meadow condition. And so, when you see changes to the camas, then there's changes to the other plants in the area. And so these are just some photos of different areas where you would find us gathering. And in our way that we believe, our religion is the Washout Religion, also known as the Longhouse Religion. We believe that everything is connected, and we believe that there's a purpose for everything. There's a purpose for the fish. There's a purpose for even the smallest insects. And when we think about foods, our elders always tell us, our Indian foods are our medicine, and especially in when they get to older ages, they really want that traditional food because they know it's going to help them. And they always tell us, take care of the food in a good way and, honor it, respect it, and preserve it, use it in ceremony and eat it at home, share with your children, all these different plants, these different foods, the salmon, the eel, the deer, the elk, all the different roots. So there's so many different kinds. And then the berries, the choke cherries, and there's a lot of different berries, and then the huckleberries. They're all connected in some way or another. And our number one resource that, we're always told to protect is water, because it's the water of the life. Water provides life for all. And without water, we wouldn't have these abundance of fish and, everything, all the different plants and that we utilize. And so that's my main point that I like to share with you all is that our food, is our medicine, and even in the non-native traditions, it's, try to live healthy and eat healthy, because, that's what you really are, is what you eat. But yeah, and so this picture, it shows the salmon, because I put everything in order as the food comes. The salmon, how important it is. And this talk is about wild plants, native plants, and health and well-being. Well, to us, all of these fish, eels, the deer, the plants, berries, they all need to be healthy for us to, to be healthy too. And that's why I went into natural resources and fisheries and growing up in the longhouse. One year when I was about 14 years old, all the longhouses didn't have a spring salmon for the feast. And this was back in the late 80s. And every year the fishermen go out in the spring, and then they bring salmon to the longhouse, to have the feast. And then that year, I recall no longhouse had a Chinook salmon for the feast. And so they're using old freezer salmon or dried salmon, and some of them only caught steelhead. And so at that time, I decided I wanted to go into natural resources to assist our tribe in some way. And that's kind of where I end up in fisheries. And that's where I'm at today. So I did a talk for Columbia Land Trust last spring. I think it was February, before all the pandemic started, but I was able to bring these items in to share with the group, and it's similar to this. It was an eagle sightseeing walk on the Klickitat, lower Klickitat, near the confluence. And after the eagle sighting, we went in and I did a presentation to talk about the traditional foods in the Klickitat Basin, and how they're they're really important to us, and how we're having difficulties in these past who knows how many years with the fisheries, and in even wildlife. You think about the different illnesses that are happening with the deer and the elk, and the recent ones, and those are all important to us, and they're important, like I said, to the ecosystem and to everything. And so I did just speak about and talked about that, and it was really good to get feedback from others and from the community who come. And as I show in this picture, the salmon is first. It comes first, and then the roots, and then the berries. And so that's what you see, and that's kind of how I talk when I'm referring to our traditional foods. And so plants utilized by tribes for health and wellness. There are so many different plants that we utilize. And like I said, the Plateau Tribes, we utilize similar plants. But other tribes, we have the same plants, like the sumac is in the Southwest and the sage is in the Southwest. And then in Montana, you see choke cherries, and tribes, a lot of the different tribes, some of the plants we use for the same purposes or maybe different, or even just for food. So for medicinal purposes, I really didn't want to, for some of our traditional medicines, we keep to, within our tribe, because, we don't want it to get commercialized. So I didn't really want to go into that, but aromatherapy, is really good. And a lot of people use sage, and it's used all over the West Coast, and for burning the sage is really good, and they say it cleanses the air, and also you can boil it into your tea. And the poppy, California poppy, they are a plant that is not native to here, but you see it here all over, and they have different purposes. The native poppy, the California poppy, the tribes in California use them for headaches and stomachache and toothaches. The milkweed, which is important for bees and other pollinators, could be used for cough remedy or a wart remover. And then the stinging nettle, which is common here, could be used for muscle and joint pain. It can be made into a tea for a stomach tonic. And also the nettles could be used for a woman during childbirth. And so these different plants, they have medicinal purposes, and they can be food. They can also be food. So what I've done over the years, with just my knowledge that I've gained over the years from my grandparents and uncles and aunts, was I kind of went and compared to different medicinal and herb books, and to what I just know off the top of my head. And what I found was, is how we use them is similar to what other tribes or how other herbalists use them also. So that's what I wanted to share. And there are, I pick up books quite a bit, and I, kind of go through them and can do a lot of comparing. But in our area, that's how I see it, is that the plants in our area that, you can find in a herbal book or other tribal websites or books of medicines, they're similar. And so, they're really important to where we live, especially during this pandemic. We've been, using sage to burn in a lot of sage to cleanse the air, because you want to have your family to be healthy. And so besides that, we use a lot of the different plants and herbs, and for dyes, for fibers, for basketry, and different, for tules, tule mats. And most important is that I see is the food part, and that's what I focus a lot of my attention on, and also sharing with our youth the importance of the traditional foods in our area, and how they go in order in the longhouse is important. It's all a teaching. And so plant fibers and the uses for the Yakama and other Plateau tribes, as I mentioned, we use a lot of the different fibers and roots of different trees to make these cedar root baskets, which are these huckleberry baskets here. And these are two elders, Mamona Kiona and Nora Kathlamet. And they're two of the main teachers of this art. It's it's a rare art now these days. Not very many know how to make these baskets anymore, and they actually do it on an annual basis, but they are not doing it this year because of the pandemic. But they put a lot of energy and to teach this, and for us it's wellness, to go out into the mountains and gather these roots and these different plants to make these traditional items. It's wellness for us because you're going out into the nature and you're making offering. Before we take medicines and in some things, sometimes we make an offering, and it's a prayer. And that's how we believe a traditional medicine. You have to pray to it before you take it from the ground. And then when you take it home and use it, you pray with it again. And even with these huckleberry baskets, we went out in a good way with elders. We took a bunch of youth and middle-aged people, and there was a bunch of us, maybe 40, and it was a good time that we spent with our elders, and that's wellness for them to share some, this important art with us, and teaching us how to do it. And this lady on the left, she's an elder. She was the last one. She was like one of the original Klickitat basketry ladies from White Salmon. And I'm really thankful that I got to know her as a child. I was really young when I was around here, and I'm thankful, to be able to know her. And she, did so many of hundreds of baskets, and she taught my two elders here how to make these. And so, teaching adults or children, or, it's all part of the cycle. Like I mentioned, everything's in a cycle. Our elders, they go 100% to teach the culture, to teach the language, the songs, the, everything. They put 100% into it. And then down below, you can see these baskets we use for root gathering. On the lower left is a root gathering basket, and a corn husk basket here. And then another, the tule reeds up here in the longhouse, the small longhouse or home site teepee, tule teepee, where they're made out of tule reeds. And, we get those from the wetlands in certain areas, where there's a lot of water, and you see the cattails. When you see the cattails, then you're probably going to see some of these tule reeds, and we go there and we gather them, and they're used quite extensively for our tribes. We use them for homes. Sometimes we build a teepee like this. We cover them with tules, and they're like for summer homes. And then, as you can see in the lower right picture, that's an older version of, and it says 1912, of a summer home here. And then also we use them for our feast and our dinners. We put them on the floor in the longhouse, and then we place all our food on them. And they're also used in funerals, so they're used quite extensively, and they're really important. And as I mentioned before, when we go gather these plants to construct bags or baskets or tule mats, we go in a good way. They say go with a good heart, and I feel, that's part of wellness and healing, is you're going with a good heart, you're going with a good mind, and you're going out into the woods, or you're going out into the wetland, or you're going out into the meadow or the huckleberry field or the creek to get choke cherries. You're going everywhere. You go with a good mind and a good heart, and you gather these these fibers, these medicines, or food sources. And for us, that's well-being, and keeping that good health. And our elders, they always say, don't just go and do nothing. They said, keep your hands moving, go make a basket, go make moccasins, go make a drum. Just keep yourself busy. You know, that's how we're taught. And move on to the next slide. So the tribes, we've always been resourced and harvest managers over the years. In the recent years, I've been involved with the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, watching or attending meetings and seeing some huckleberry restoration on the forest with thinning, with logging and burning. And fire was one of the big land management tools utilized by the tribes in forest meadows and shrub steppe environments to renew the soil and get rid of plants that had diseases. And then in the lower pictures on the left and the right, you can see old pictures of women and picking berries, and also a group of tribal members come into the berry patch to start picking. And you can see the difference of the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. These pictures were taken on the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, of the difference of, you don't see the thick trees, the overgrown trees in the huckleberry fields. And also on the right picture, you can tell those trees were burnt. And that was a method, and it's, quite famous. And our elders, told us that, a certain time these berry fields, were burnt as a land management tool. After all the berry pickers, went home and, left the berry fields, and, everyone knew that everybody was out of there. The tribes did burn these huckleberry fields. And not only the huckleberry fields, but different areas, like the different root grounds in the meadows are, like I said, shrub steppe environments where some of these plants, when they start disappearing, are seeing changes. They did do that. And in recent years, I go root digging in this one area, and it burned. And it took about 4 years before the roots, came back naturally on their own, but they did come back. The sage, not so much, but the roots did eventually return after that fire, which was a lightning fire. And for harvest, I mentioned before, the chiefs were harvest managers for the fish and hunting, but the women, the elders, they were the harvest managers for the huckleberries. And they're the ones who, said, oh, the roots are ready, this root is ready, this berry is ready. And in the spring, we always had a root feast. We had multiple sometimes, to honor the different roots that came through. And it's a teaching and that we have to have our feast to honor the foods, the water first, and all the different foods, we line them up. We have a ceremony, and we honor those, and we're honoring them, and we're thankful that they come back every year. And part of our harvest rules was we're not allowed to gather if the berries aren't ripe, and that's really important, that we're not gathering berries and other foods when they're not ripe. We wait until they're ripe. And then another part of our what we do is when we gather roots in different plants, after we take the peelings and the stems off, we take it back to that same place where we got it, and we return those seeds and everything back to those areas so that, they'll be replenished for following years. In this middle photo, you can see these are huckleberry baskets here. And what is going on is usually when they're lined up is, the woman will line their berries up and then usually cover it with some kind of foliage. And then before we go home and take it to the longhouse. So I wanted to talk a little bit also about native vegetation restoration in streams and meadows. It's been something that was asked to me a few times, from other restoration biologists. And what I always would recommend is just the native plants, totally the native plants of the area, an assessment of trees in the watershed or the meadows or wherever you're at. And then just trying to enhance the native species as much as possible. In the right picture, this is a site where the cattails, they're starting to come back in Rock Creek. And so I worked there since 2008, and this is a recent picture from last year. So, a good 12 years or so. There weren't any cattails, not very many cattails in Rock Creek. So in different areas now in Rock Creek, there's cattails coming back and tule weeds, and those are good for, for Rock Creek, for the ecosystem, for everything, the wetlands. And so I appreciate, all the different restoration that's going on everywhere, the different restoration projects. They're all important. Like I mentioned, we gather a lot of different plants and fruits from the riparian corridors and meadows. And, it's just really important for wildlife, for fish, birds, everything to replenish the stream sides and so they can provide food. And these two pictures are of a site where we removed probably like 3 acres of 12-foot blackberries along Rock Creek. And I just wanted to show, like, this is only year 2 after the we actually burned the blackberries, and every year we're keeping blackberries out. But as soon as the blackberries were removed from this is a tribal piece of land in Rock Creek, the wetland, it just like sprouted naturally. All the wetland plants came in, and even some riparian plants. And we even planted these red dogwoods here, and they're really good here. They just sprouted out really good. But a lot of this is just natural. They returned on their own, and there's a lot of wildlife in there now, and it just turned out really good, and it's really saturated throughout the year. And that was just removing blackberries, and that's all we did in every year. We just try to keep the blackberries out, but that's good for the creek. It's good for fish. It's good for all the different wildlife, and also there are like choke cherries grown nearby on the edges of it, and different berries that we can utilize, and it's just an important, I think it's an important aspect to think about of restoration, and this, like, for instance, this site, I didn't really have to do a lot of work in it. It was just remove the blackberries, and this wetland came back to life. So I wanted to include traditional ecological knowledge, and with and how it could be utilized. Traditional ecological knowledge, is knowledge that's passed down generationally from elders to the youth through oral histories, stories, ceremonies, and land management practices, like I mentioned with the huckleberry burning. And it's based from old indigenous knowledge systems. And traditional ecological knowledge, it encompasses a wide variety of traditional practices that are fundamental for the traditional culture. And and usually traditional ecological knowledge is the application of the specific area of the tribe, and it relates to the environment and ecology, which includes botanical knowledge, medicinal application, where hunting and fishing, gathering, processing of materials occurred, and also it even could utilize astronomy, phrenology, and ecological markers, species markers, or weather and climate knowledge. And for the Rock Creek project, we go to our elders of our band, and we talk to them about the history of the watershed, about how did it look, as they were growing up, and what did their elders and parents talk about, the condition of the watershed, the different animal and vegetation species that were there. And personally, I think it'd be good for restoration or other, even development projects, if they would consult with, the nearest tribe, whether it be Yakama, Warm Spring, or, what other tribe is there in the area that they're in. And it would help, I think, tremendously with friction with the tribes. And I just think it's really good if this concept was used more often in different restoration scenarios, and just with development and urbanization that's going on. And another issue that I come across is people moving in from other areas, and they're like spraying off the traditional plants or the native plants in Klickitat County, and it's kind of like killing off the native plants, and which isn't really fair. And this slide, I just want to talk briefly about threats to native plants in this area. And these are more recent big projects that are happening, proposed, and and one's happening now. The green energy projects, in this time and age with climate change and all, everybody's saying, let's have green energy, but really these projects are so large in scale that they're having a big impact on the native plants, that are important to this area. And we already felt, the Rock Creek Band and other Yakama Nation, we already felt, the big impacts of wind farms already, And so now we have this big water pump storage project near the John Day Dam, just downstream, where they want to, build a big pipe up the ridge and a big reservoir on top and one on the bottom to assist with the wind energy. And to us, these are our traditional gathering sites from the bottom of the ridge to the top, and we got all kinds of different plants that we utilize. And our very first feast that we always have is near the site, and that plant only grows in this area, in Lavateum, lavagatum. And this lamatium, it's the first food for the Plateau Tribes in this area in particular. It grows first. So many of the different longhouses come here and gather, and then this project is proposed there, right there, where we gather every year and have been gathering, for years and years. Another one that we're dealing with on the east side of the Klickitat County is the sprawling grape vineyards that are, this is the picture on the left is the proposed grape vineyard. They already started down below here, and they want to, transfer all this land here into grape vineyards. And our longhouse is just right here. This is our longhouse. And we're worried about pesticides coming over, but we're also worried about all these, this changes to the shrub steppe environment here. to grape vineyards. And not only here, this is happening from Peterson, Washington, and, you know, all the way to Rock Creek, and they're moving west with these grape vineyards. So, you know, that's an impact to the different plants that are native plants in the area. And then on the right is the increasing popular solar energy that's coming to Klickitat County and elsewhere. Right now, they already have 1,800 acres of shrub steppe habitat, and also important winter deer habitat in Roosevelt, and in between two watersheds. You know, and they want to put 250,000 solar panels is phase one. When they get to the end of their phases, they want a million. And there's another proposed one in Goldendale, near the Goldendale hatchery, where they want to do 6,000 acres with anticipated 2.5 million panels. And that is just right here in Goldendale where I live. And you know, I just feel like it's a big impact to the area, wildlife, fish, water. And so, you know, I just wish people would, you know, take all that into consideration. If you're going to build a solar plant, you know, so big, there's no room for wildlife in here. There's no room for eagles to hunt, and hawks and deer. And so, you know, that's a big concern, besides losing all the shrub habitat and the different habitats where, you know, you have wetlands, you have riparian, you just have all sorts of different habitats in these big pieces of land where they want to do green energy. And I know climate change is a big one, and impacts to the traditional plants and the Yakama Nation resources. And climate change is important, you know, to all of us who live here. And I think we all know that. And already, you know, we're feeling the impacts of climate change as Yakama Nation, as we go gather our foods. When we don't have a snowpack, we know our roots are going to come sooner. We know all the different plant seasons shifted forward. We know that it's happening right now. And sometimes, you know, when there's not a good snowpack, it hinders the huckleberries, or different, you know, we know and we see the different impacts of climate change that's already happened now. It's happening now. And so the Yakama Nation, you know, they developed a climate adaptation plan for the Yakama Nation. And the plan does address some of the ceded lands, but, you know, the ceded lands is really broad in Washington, from, you know, Columbia River, you know, it's almost a third of Washington state. And so, so in the plan, and, you know, it states climate change is real, and unfortunately the effects appear to be in motion. We are witnessing changes in the seasons. Our roots and berries must be gathered sooner, and the salmon returns are less predictable. And our people notice less snow in the mountains, and there's less cool water during the summer when it was once abundant. These changes may not bode well for our future. And over the years to come, we may lose natural resources and that are important for our culture and heritage. And some of these losses are irreversible. And so the climate change, you know, it's kind of divided into community resources, tribal community resources, health, public safety, tribal infrastructure, lands, and ag. And then the second section is environmental impacts to forestry, water and wetlands, fisheries, shrub, steppe, and rangelands, wildlife, vegetation, and toxics. Like I mentioned, you know, we are already seeing firsthand that climate change is happening now. And what I'm worried about is we gather so many different foods in the shrub steppe environment. You know, it requires, you know, so much precipitation every year, and, you know, what foods could we lose, and are the habitats are going to shift, and, you know, there's just a lot of different questions. And And so I'm thankful the tribe is taking climate change, into consideration, and other agencies that I work with, the Columbia Gorge Scenic Act, and the natural resources meetings that I've attended. And I'm just thankful, even Columbia River Intertribal Fisheries Commission, they have a climate change plan also. But, I'm just thankful that people, we're trying to look forward and work towards resiliency. And as I mentioned before, we share this traditional knowledge with our children. And I mentioned when we go out to gather these foods, we try to go out in a good way. We try to, like I say, humble ourselves before we go out, and we honor the foods before we go out. So, we try to teach all those to the children, teach them the language, teach them these different areas that we travel to, teach them the different foods, and how they're a medicine to our bodies, how the berries, cleanse your blood, how important it is to have clean water in the creeks, how important there is there to have shade over the creeks. We take them to these different places and so they can see and learn about the different fish in the Columbia River and throughout the basin. And we take them fishing, hunting, and another important aspect is actually camping up in the right-hand corner. I try to spend as much time camping on the ground, in a tent, not in a trailer, so that you can feel that experience of being there really. I grew up picking huckleberries, for 2 months straight. Me, my grandma, and my aunt, and my cousin, we stayed up in the mountains for 2 months straight. And that's just gathering berries and the different resources up there. And so that's an important aspect of, teaching this knowledge, is actually staying there, actually waking up in the cold morning and hauling your own water in a bucket, building a fire, that's all part of it. And in the right-hand corner, I also bring youth out, and they help me on a few days, on a few occasions. They plant trees in Rock Creek, just to teach them the importance of trees, importance, of it to the watershed and the fish and everything. And they learn a lot, and they're happy to see their trees grow. I do more education and outreach with different groups, and mostly youth. And in this picture, I'm talking to the Columbia Land Trust group that came to Klickitat River. And on the right-hand side, I hiked with these youth from the bottom of a hillside, and we walked to the where Buck Creek originates from a spring. And I talked to them all the way down and all the way up about these different plants along the trail and uses. And I talked about legend stories, Yakama legend stories, and the importance of water, and it was a really good experience to be with the youth out there from all different schools, and share what I can share with them. And they learned a lot, and I enjoyed the time, just to be out there in nature once again, to humble yourself, to be out there in nature, to do the hike, to enjoy the smells of cedar trees and, forest. In the lower pictures, I also work with youth, and our technicians. We work with youth during the summer, and we do these fisheries, these little fish shocking exercises, and they really enjoy it. They learn a lot. They learn about fisheries. They learn why we're shocking the creek, to know what kind of fish is in there, and these crawdads. And also bringing in the plant element into it, the different plants, how are they helping the creek, and how all the different macroinvertebrates and are important besides the fish. And they get to learn a lot, and it's a really good experience. Here are two websites. I think they'll be on the UCD website later, but it's more information about education and outreach. resources for the Native youth, or just youth in general. It has more of a curriculum base, and it is developed by some of the Plateau Tribes and teachers, and approved by the different education programs. But I think the Solilo curriculum's on Washington side, or it could be on Oregon, but these are two good resources that I wanted to share, because I get asked a lot, how can you incorporate the Native culture into the curriculum? And I go to different schools and share with students. And I also worked with the Confluence program, and went to different schools and talked about the Solilo Falls and the history and all that. So these are just two good sites that I would recommend. And even if others just want to learn more, here it is here. This is another little walk we did in Trout Lake. I was able to do with some youth, a youth group. Here's just a photo of Yakamas and Plateau Tribes, how we go out. We go out with the elders, we go out with the babies, all ages. We go out in groups, and we try to enjoy each other. We try to teach the children, what to do and what not to do. When you're in the forest, you have to have respect for the anthills. You have to have respect for the forest. We don't yell. You have to have respect. And that's part of, our teaching and our culture when we're out in the woods, when we're out picking berries, digging roots, hunting, there's a certain way you conduct yourself. And then on this slide, and this last slide, I wanted to talk about some foods that we're losing, and even a food source that we did lose, actually, and it kind of just went away, like nobody was gathering them. Maybe the species, the Wapato, just left, and on the Yakama reservation, there's a town called Wapato, and in that plant, it didn't disappear. The seeds must have stayed in the way down in the soil, but after this, the wetland was restored, these Wapato, came back, and some of the tribal members start gathering them, and it's getting more known throughout the tribe, and different schools are taking the tribal students out to learn again, how to gather these plants that grow in the wetland. And another species that we are losing, over the years. Since I was a child, I used to go bridgelip sucker fishing with my cousins, and we'd catch a bunch at Rock Creek. And we take them to the longhouse for the feast or different ceremonies. And now these days, maybe we're lucky to catch one or two. And so in time, we're hoping to have, a recovery of suckers in Rock Creek to its historical populations. What our elders told us, how abundant they were at one time when they were younger. And we know, it's changes to the watershed, to the ecosystem. It's changes, probably it could be due to, to the 100-year plus logging in the headwaters, and the could be due to the cattle been in the creeks for who knows how many years, and there's just cumulative effects. But hopefully, we can get the bridgelip suckers populations back up where we can have a feast of the bridgelip suckers, because they're actually first before the salmon. In March, we're supposed to be having a feast for them. But I wanted to show this video. I'm gonna try to show it. It's I'll have to close this. Please let me know if it works. Can you all see it?
is a rock grade control structure which emulates what a beaver dam does, and that it lifts up Coppernish Creek and the water. And the water table around it to allow the natural vegetation to grow freely.
Mm. So with that, that's the end of my presentation, and I hope you were all able to see the video.
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. We were able to see it, and thank you so much for a wonderful presentation and for sharing a really wholehearted approach to living with our native landscape. We do have some questions in the box here that I'd like to go ahead and read. And we would love to see your video again, if you wouldn't mind turning it back on. Sorry that we didn't get to see you while you were presenting.
Okay, I'll try to turn it on.
Our first question here says from Kim. She says, "Thank you so much for sharing your background and wisdom tonight. I think it's good that non-native peoples are reconnecting to nature, and many are collecting native plants for foods and medicines. Yet I'm concerned about the impact this may have on overusing earth. I would appreciate hearing your thoughts on this."
Okay, overusing the earth, or in regards to gathering the foods, or so I mentioned before, when we go gather our foods, we only gather so much, and we know we're not going to overharvest a certain area, so there's multiple areas where we can gather, and we try not to like hammer one area. And when we gather our foods, we take the stem with us, and we clean the roots, and we take those roots and stems back to the same place where we gathered, and we spread it out all over, just to try to, and it's just a teaching that our elders gave us, to try to keep those seeds, take it back to where you got it, and hopefully they're going to come back. And also our elders told us, that we till the earth naturally, we're tilling it. We're not using a big tractor or anything, we just have a little hand tool, and we till, and we only get so much, only is sometimes I can only get a small basket because the roots are so tiny. Some of them can be like the size of a little marble, and it takes a long time to fill a basket full of little marbles. And that's just one root. And there's just multiple different kind of roots, and they grow in seasons. So, when this one root is done growing, we'll go to the next season of another root. And, we don't over harvest and ensure that even when we're picking berries. One problem that we do have, like in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest with the commercial harvesting of huckleberries, we are in competition with the commercial pickers. And sometimes we have a bad berry year, and it's sad, we don't even take very much berries home because the berries, if it gets too hot, or if we have a really hard rain, they just tear up the berries. And then, so, over harvesting for the tribes, in regards to the roots and the berries, we are cautious of it. And we make sure that we're not taking every berry. And that's a teaching. You don't take all the berries because, there's birds and there's others that utilize those resources too.
Yes, I think Kim had a clarification here, and I think that's what she was referring to is just the overuse from other folks. She said she's in Trout Lake and noticed so many people coming this summer into the forest and not respecting the land to the extent that they were going back to the same places over and over for berries and mushrooms.
Yeah.
We have another question here. Elaine, you were talking about some of those green energy projects earlier, and we have a comment. What can we do as locals to help support the tribes in their opposition to some of these projects that they are opposing? Are there ways to get involved or places to find more information?
Yeah, right now, the Klickitat County Commissioners, they have some information on their website, and that's in regards to the water pump storage and also the Lund Hill Solar Project in Roosevelt. And they have, some of those documents that they have on file. But other ways would be like to join the commissioners meeting from time to time, listen in, and they have public comment where you can talk to the commissioners. And also another way is like linking in with Columbia Riverkeeper and other NGOs, non-governmental agencies who work with the tribes. And, sometimes they have these petitions online where you can sign a petition online, to protect the Columbia River, or the Columbia Riverkeeper is actually quite involved with the John Day Storage Project right now. And so different NGOs in the area, checking out their websites and seeing what they're doing, and also just following up with the Klickitat County commissioners.
Okay, great, thank you. We had a compliment here, well-deserved. Elaine, that was very interesting and informative. Thank you. I'm so impressed with all that you do. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And another comment here, Columbia Riverkeeper and Friends of the White Salmon locally are working in opposition to the Goldendale pumped storage project. So another two groups to reach out to there. We had a question way back in the beginning before we really got started about utility to ceanothus. Do you have any comments on that?
What was the question again?
The utility of to ceanothus.
I don't really know the response to that.
Okay.
Is that like a species or?
Yeah, like the kind of the wild lilac, the ceanothus bushes.
Oh. As I recall, I don't think we utilize that plant, but it's one of the species that's that's really important because they're all connected together, habitat wise.
Yes. That is all I'm seeing in the questions box right now. So folks, if you have other questions.
This is Tova. I have a really quick question, hopefully. Elaine, you mentioned tule as a bulrush, I believe, that you used for the mats and baskets. And how is that related to tule fall chinook, which is also, I believe, the species for white salmon? What the white salmon is I believe, a tule fall chinook. Are they related in some way, or just what's the story there?
I don't think they're related. Yeah. I don't know if they could be, but I just don't know the connection between. But the tule salmon are, were historically really important species. And my mom, every year, my mom fishes at Wind River area. So, they catch a lot of tules, and she always makes sure she dries it. She dries it halfway. And then since it's so rainy in the fall, she'll smoke it. But she said those were really important for species a long time ago, and she likes to carry that tradition on with preserving the tules.
Cool. All right, thank you.
We have a couple more questions in here. One question, are industrial toxins a factor in the loss of available traditional foods?
I think they are in certain circumstances. So for like the solar project that's planned in Goldendale, the big one near the Goldendale hatchery, there's a wetland there, and the solar panels are going to be kind of upstream and downstream of the wetland. And so, I just have a lot of concern for contaminants that are going to go into the groundwater, and wetlands are supposed to, be a filter system anyways, but still, there's a hatchery right by the wetland too. So, you have a lot of different concerns, but yeah, there's a big wetland there. And another instances that I can think of is in the Yakama Valley, where they have those milk farms and milk industries over there. And, sometimes it leaks into the watersheds over there, the creeks, and has impacts to plants over there. But I feel that there are, some, in different areas, it kind of depends what you're talking about.
We have a question here. Can private landowners help provide places for tribal members to harvest traditional foods and medicines?
That's one topic I forgot to bring up during the presentation, was with, a long time ago at my grandma's age, the elders, they kind of knew each other. My grandma knew these ranchers and farmers here and there. And so there was a relationship that was built. And then, as the elder people pass away, then you have the younger generations, the people who inherit, or like me, my age and younger, there's like not that connection there anymore. So sometimes we are hesitant to go gather roots on private lands, and we would like to, and we try to be respectable to the land and the property. And so that was one topic I wanted to bring up, was if you see us out there picking berries or choke cherries, or digging roots somewhere, maybe you can we don't mind talking, but I'll just say in a few cases we've been chased out just from digging roots with our children, and it turns out to be like a tragic event, because our kids are like traumatized from it, because this guy was really rude. But we would like to work with landowners to be able to gather foods in our in this area. Like I mentioned, we gather in Oregon all the way up to Wenatchee. Sometimes we go up to Ephrata. These all different places we still go to gather, and it would be nice if we can get access to do that again.
Okay. Is there someone that landowners should reach out to, or how would they be in contact?
In this area, I usually talk to a lot of the different food gatherers, and if they even wanted to just email me or call me, that's fine. And maybe give me an idea where they live or location. And there are different longhouses. Like there's a longhouse in Lyle. There was it recently burned, but that longhouse community, they gather roots over there in Lyle, White Salmon, Klickitat area yet, and the elders. And then so I keep in contact with them and could share the information with them.
Okay, great. Thank you. And along those lines, we had a comment here. We had one farm friend family allows us to dig in the eastern end of the county, but agree with you, Elaine, we've been questioned or have questions to us. So yeah, we'll definitely share Elaine's contact information, and with your permission, Elaine, we'll share your slide set on the website and our presentation tonight as well. So
Okay.
can look for that for follow-up. We did have another compliment here. So I really appreciated hearing your talk, and thank you for all that you do for Native habitats, youth, and tribal people, and many good wishes for a good root harvest.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we really want a good root harvest. This past year was we had a really good root harvest and a berry harvest. It's the most berries and roots I probably think we've gathered in many years. And my mom is really happy. She's an elder now. And so we had a good year. And one thing about this pandemic was, the kids were out of school and some of the parents were at home not working. And so there was more of the, traditional knowledge being shared with the kids because they were actually out in the woods or wherever gathering foods. And I've noticed that, firsthand, compared to previous years. And I thought, even though the pandemic was going on, there's some positivity, coming out of it, where our youth was able to be out there camping and digging roots and, doing what they should be doing.
Yeah, a few silver linings to this last year, even among the challenges. So I think we are pretty much at the end of our time here, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I think that I'll go ahead and wrap it up now, but we definitely will share information on how to get in contact with both UCD and with Elaine if you have follow-up questions. And we will be posting, again, her slide set and also our presentation tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Tova, I think, for a couple of last thoughts.
Jan, and thank you again, Elaine, for such a great presentation this evening. And we want to thank all of our attendees again for joining us this evening. And we hope to see you at our next winter workshop on February 4th about common weeds at the Columbia River Gorge with Emily Stevenson. So until then, please stay safe, everyone. Stay well, and good night.
Thank you all.